Welcome to the webinar Break the Rules, Take Backdoors to Update Banking Details in SAP. My name is Tidiane de Jong. I'm an Associate Director at Accenture based in the Netherlands. I've been working on SAP security and controls for the past 20 years. I've been involved in quite a number of sub-GRCs, segregated duties, role design, security, data protection, and business control projects. And over those 20 years, I had the pleasure to work with Joris a couple of times. Um, Today, there's a lot of focus on keeping the external attackers out of the SP system, but the insider threat is just as real and often even more dangerous. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring today. I'm here with Joris.
Thanks, CJ. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. And indeed, my name is Joris van der Vis. I'm also based out of the Netherlands, working currently as the Director of Security Research for SecurityBridge. I come from a bit more technical background, being basis consultant all my life, and I've been in what we call SAP cybersecurity nowadays for 20 years already, quite a long time. I've been doing a lot of SP implementations, security implementations, working on security tooling, doing penetration tests, but also been working for quite some large companies, one of the big four, Deloitte, for example. And excited to be here with you today, TJ.
Well, thank you. Before we continue, let me misuse the opportunity now that everybody is here because I'm very excited. Many of you already have heard about Secure Together, and I'm very happy to announce that the flagship event is returning to Rotterdam again in 2026. Last year we welcomed almost 200 attendees, and this year we expect even more. Not only is Secure Together back, but the Security and Controls Masterclass is also returning to Rotterdam the day before. And there's also an opportunity to certify in SecurityBridge. So we're looking very much forward to this week. If you want to join, feel free to scan the QR code on the bottom right. I'll give you a few seconds before we move to the next slide.
Yeah, great, DJ. And let me add, maybe great if we can see if we can try to fill the complete ship with security people of Europe. Would be nice. Okay, I'll move to the next slide. By the way, if you did not scan the QR code yet, Google for SAP Security Week Rotterdam, and I'm pretty sure you'll find it too.
So the real issue, so why can bank details in SAP be updated in so many ways without anyone noticing it? And I think the issue lies in the gap between IT and the business. So IT often thinks, I'm not taking sides here, that the business should define sub-security and controls, and the business meanwhile thinks it is IT's responsibility because the business doesn't have the technical knowledge. It's sometimes a bit like at my home with me and my wife and my kids. Both of us assume that the other is responsible for ensuring that my kids go to bed at a good time. But often my kids, especially when it's my turn or my wife feels it's my turn, take advantage of that opportunity and they go bed very much later than I was trying to do so. Well, this misalignment they creates a lot of overlooked vulnerabilities in SAP. It becomes unclear who's really responsible for risk identification and remediation, and ultimately that leads to a high risk exposure. Examples are, as we will illustrate and show through several videos in the presentation, updating bank details in SAP. There are multiple ways, but there are also multiple ways to modify payment terms, to change the customer credit manipulate price information, change employee salaries, etc., etc. And during this webinar, we explore how these gaps occur, the risk they create, and how to address them effectively. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the techniques we will show today that can circumvent controls for updating bank details include the lesser known transaction codes and Fiori apps, transporting code from the lower environment to transport requests to the high environments, customization, updating, and direct table, manipulating the payment file before the payment is really executed, taking advantage of misconfiguration of the alternative PE configuration, and manipulate remote function calls. So remote function call is the communication mechanism between SAP systems, and also leveraging API calls. For what it is worth, at least one of these techniques that I will show led to SOX deficiency at one of my clients, and two, to an audit observation. And I'm sure that during this presentation, Joris could add a bit more around that as well. Keep in mind that these are not the only techniques. There are other methods to update bank details, like uploading files. Think about master data consolidation or mob maintenance, GUI scripting or other scripting techniques, customer enhancements that you can enable and configure in your customization, debugging, of course, iDocs, and so on. Next slide, please.
Yeah, sure, TJ. And let me add, I think these are good examples. And keep in mind, it's just examples. Basically, it's not about the bank details per se. You can do this for any other business scenario. And yeah, it's important to keep in mind that the standard SAP controls can be bypassed. So you should do more than you might do currently. Back to you, TJ.
So some important guidelines before, or perhaps ground rules before we kick off. If you want to use these techniques at home, right, or somewhere else, do get approval. Don't access sensitive data without permission. Unauthorized access or activities, right, could lead to consequences, and do respect other people's privacy and security. And what we show today is just for learning purpose only. So do only use it at your own risk. If you don't agree with the content, right, feel free to log off. And I guess by staying at this webinar, you also acknowledge and consent to these guidelines. Thanks. Next slide, please. Next one. Yeah, so exploiting the unknown or lesser known transaction codes. Yeah, so one of the biggest risks we typically see in SAP is the misuse of lesser known or transaction codes of Fiori apps. Most people only think about the main transaction codes like XK01 for creating suppliers, or FK02 for changing the financial details of a supplier. Know that SAP has more than 100,000 transaction codes, and currently already more than 16,000 Fiori apps, and I believe more than 4,000 Pro applications. And quite of these allow changes to supplier bank details. And many of them are not widely known in the community. So if somebody understands how to identify this hidden T codes or apps, for example, by checking which programs they call or seeing which ones share logic with other similar transactions, they could simply request access to them. Well, and there could be some change management activities by that. So these requests are checked against the GRC SAP rulebook, but that rulebook is often incomplete and inaccurate. And it's usually based on the SAP standard rulebook, which was developed back in the early 20s. So yeah, I even didn't start my SAP career when the rulebook was already out there. And meanwhile, a lot of new SAP releases happened, and a lot of new transaction codes and Fiori apps have been introduced. So what happened if this risky T code isn't listed in the rulebook? It won't be flagged if that's being executed at all during the risk analysis, and the access is usually rendered without permission. So this means that the only way to really catch these risks is to manually review everything. So I mean all the transaction codes and apps, which is time consuming and honestly a nightmare to do, but there's no good alternative. On the next slide, we will show a short video how easy it is to execute these transaction codes. Let's start with the video. Yeah, we start with a transaction code called PUP2, which brings us to the business partner screen. And from here, we can look up a supplier and access their bank master data, where you could also potentially update it. Now we go to another example, CASN DDD02, and here we select a business partner as well, just like PUP2, and here we can also update the bank details. There are many more transactions that gives us the ability. I think now we go to a transaction code called DB1D. There are a few variants of these transaction codes out there, which people probably don't even realize, but it gives the end of the ability to chain the bank master details. I will let the video continue from here, but as you can see, once we open a few more T codes or app, the pattern becomes clear. Different paths, different screens, different transactions or apps, but they all lead to the same end results, and that's the ability to change the bank details. Well, the real issue is that, as said, a lot of these transaction codes and apps are completely unknown to the GRC and SAP teams or the security teams that are responsible for it. And because they are not listed in your SAP rulebook, which could either be GRC or another application you use, access requests typically with these transactions are with the question, and when the request isn't flagged in the system, it will most likely be approved. Joris, you can go to the second scenario.
Yes. Thanks, TJ. I think a great demonstration of risk you don't typically think about. And that's why I like doing this together with you, TJ. I'm coming myself more from a technical background, as I mentioned, and I did penetration testing really focused on exploiting, let's say, the technical capabilities of an SAP system. But I think that that's not always necessary if you can abuse the business logic that is already there. I think the one I'm highlighting now and I want to tell a bit more about is a bit in between, and that's making use of the transport mechanism of SAP. Most of the things that we are showing here, so it's not really about 0 days or anything. It's more using SAP as designed. This alternative might help you get specific data in a productive system with the use of transports. And yes, the transport mechanism might have quality gates, for example, that do check sometimes some of the steps to get data into production. But what we quite often see is that it's absolutely possible to get content into production, for example, via transports. And typically there's a lack of visibility inside transports. And that's also quite logical. I mean, nobody wants to manually check the content in a transport, especially if you have hundreds or thousands of transports flowing from dev to QA to production in a year. But it can actually be abused, and it's a quite easy thing to do, as we'll show in the next video. I'll walk you through the video. What we see currently is a business partner in production with a specific bank account. ending in 764. What we show now is that we can use a transport that we prepared up front in a dev system with content in the TBAN table. That's the table where you can store IBAN bank details. And by simply moving a transport to production, the content from that specific table will be overwritten in production. And if that's for a business partner that you know, you can change the bank details. We're currently importing the transport, and that takes a while. And again, there might be quality gates, there might be approvals that need to be given, but as we all know, these approvals are in real life just somebody saying accept, 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 instead of really checking the contents. And what you see then is if we go back to that business partner in production, we can see that the transport actually changed the bank account ending in 764 to one ending in a lot of nines. And this might sound easy, but it's actually definitely a very convenient way to do changes in production by using SAP technology. Now, you might ask, is there anything we can do to prevent that, to monitor that? Yes, you can. I don't want to make this presentation too commercial, but I'm here as the Director of Research for SecurityBridge, and we actually spend a lot of time in trying to detect these kind of scenarios. And one of the things with the SecurityBridge platform that we can monitor is the actual content in transports. There's a lot of predefined content that we ship that we look for when moving transports between systems. And if we find content that should not be there, like for example, the TBAN table, this is typically not something you transport, then we do flag that with an event in the event monitor. So you can take action and really, let's say, opening up that black box that SAP is. Quite often we're not always know, or in many cases we have no clue what's happening inside SAP. With this monitoring, you can and take action. So that's just one example. We have a couple of others. One I think is closely related to what TJ already showed, and that is in the area of transaction codes. TJ showed alternative transaction codes, but you can also have custom transaction codes. The standard controls in SAP, they tend to focus on standard SAP transactions, but they ignore the ones built by customers. And I think this is also one of the audit findings that are typically done. I think TJ, you have some experience there as well. Many customers, they build their own custom transaction codes. Why? To add some functionality to a standard SAP transaction code, or simply because they want to make it more convenient. Convenience is a big killer of security. But if you don't monitor them, then you actually run risk. So we have an example. Let me show you again a video where we made a copy of the BP transaction. So let's show that one first. This is the typical BP business partner transaction that also TJ showed before. But we made a copy of that to the ZTBAN transaction in this case. And you can monitor the BP transaction, but the ZTBAN is not done so by default. And as you can see, we can do the exact same thing here and change the bank account details. But if we do it from the ZTBAN transaction, it might go unnoticed. It might not be monitored. It might not be logged. Again, a really, really, really easy way to change the bank details, but typically one that might go unnoticed in many organizations. Also here, we have some monitoring in place. What we can see in this case with the SecurityBridge platform is that a new transaction was created. That's being monitored, but also you can monitor, if you want, the start or execution of custom transaction codes. Obviously, we ship the product with a lot of standard transactions, not the ZTBAN transaction code, but as a customer, the platform is quite flexible. You can just add that transaction code to be monitored, and then you will see, as of then, starting, execution, etc. of these custom transaction codes. Some other examples, and I think this is one that's often neglected, but that's the power of ABAP. The ABAP programming language is allowing you to basically do everything inside an SAP system. It's really, really powerful. And one of the things you can do from ABAP, and I think many might know, is direct table updates for SAP standard tables. Like in this case, the TBAN table. This is not monitored by default and also has a quite high potential risk for business data. What we will demonstrate here with the video is just a simple ABAP script or ABAP program. Again, you see the bank account ends at 764 in the BP transaction. Now let's go to our custom-made Z-update TBAN program, where we directly in the TBAN table do a direct table update and change it again to 999. If we execute that, direct processing, boom, and it's already done. Then if we go back to the business partner and show the bank details, you will see it's changed from 764 at the end to 999. Again, ABAP is powerful, and to be honest, I've never seen ABAP systems at customers that did not contain custom code. Many customers use custom ABAP to modify standard SAP or extend standard SAP, and even SAP is quite strict on the clean core and those kind of principles. But we all know that, well, basically any SAP customer has a large backlog and legacy of ABAP code, custom ABAP code in their systems. And how can you be sure that these kind of things don't happen with the custom code in your systems? Well, without monitoring, you don't. Again, the SecurityBridge platform monitors, for example, for program updates on or direct table updates of standard SAP tables. And as you can see here, this is coming from the event monitor. You can see that there is a standard table manipulation vulnerability, which means you might need to take action and see why, because it's not a best practice to do direct standard SAP table updates. So another one, and this is a more technical one. It's a bit of a tricky one, and it requires operating system access in many cases, and it requires also the right timing. But when the payment file that is to be sent to a bank is created, it's often stored temporarily on the operating system. I mean, there's many ways to build these kind of interfaces, but what we saw a lot at customers is that what happens, SAP creates this bank payment file, puts it on the operating system, at least for a while, then it gets encrypted, and then it gets sent out to SAP, if it gets encrypted at all, that is. And I think nowadays it should be, but there's always a timing moment where it's on the operating system and not encrypted yet. And what you can do then, if you're at the right place at the right time, you can modify the bank payment file. Again, it's a bit of a tricky one, but it can definitely be done. It might sound far-fetched, but it's actually a real risk. We do monitor for that. File manipulation on the operating system. How it works, we can show. And by the way, this is done via the remote gateway OS execution. This is a design flaw that is there in SAP for many decades. You need to close it down with a proper access control list. It's a lot of technical blah blah. I'll spare you the details, but we still find these vulnerabilities in SAP systems. And if you don't properly secure the RFC gateway, it allows OS command execution, and that will allow you to change the bank payment file again before it's encrypted and sent to the bank. What it will look like, and this is just a simple example. Well, it's simple, but it's using the command line set, which changes one bank account into another one in the payment file. And this is done unauthenticated, again, if you did not properly protect your RFC gateway. Now, if we go to the SAP system, have a look at that file, you can see it here. It's an XML in this case, and we can see that the bank details have changed again from 764 at the end to 999 at the end. You can do the same basically with any OS access. This is just using a very technical exploit. If you have access rights to transactions like SM49 or SM69, you can do the exact same thing. We actually use this in penetration testing to do stuff like bypass authorizations or break out of client separations. But this is an example that you can do as well. Again, it's important to monitor this. Otherwise, you have no clue this is happening. In this case, this is the monitoring of RSPDC OS 0, a transaction that also allows you to go to the operating system. But we can monitor SM69, SM49 as well, basically showing that you can execute OS commands. What we also monitor for is, and that's the first event on top, are file manipulations. So in this case, we can see that the file has been changed, not from the SAP application, it is, but from the RC gateway component. We still are able to monitor that and helping you to better highlight what's happening. Back to you, TJ, for another nice example.
Thank you, Joris. Yeah, before I joined Accenture, I worked in different internal audit roles. And during one of my reviews, we identified a significant issue related to the alternative P field in vendor document. This functionality allows users to modify bank details at the time of invoice posting. So you can imagine the risk payments could easily end up at the wrong bank account. And as we dug deeper, we found out that several suppliers had the PE in document field enabled. And this meant that users could enter an alternative PE information directly in the document. Because the SP system is not distinguishing whether the bank data originates from the supplier master record or was manually entered during invoicing, the SOX control, what was designed to prevent bank detail changes at posting, failed. So in other words, the control assumed that all bank details were master data driven, but this configuration allowed users to override that unnoticed. And to make it worse, the risk even materialized several times for the past few years. And at that point, yeah, basically at this organization, hell broke loose. The root cause was a configuration weakness. The alternative PE in document field had been activated for a couple of suppliers. In the next video, I will show how this is done. Yeah, so I first navigate to transaction code FBO2. That's the change accounting document, which is a very common transaction code assigned to many users. I've entered already the document number, and now I go to the payment tab, and there's nothing specific or special about this. Now I click on bank details, and that takes me to the business partner screen. Nothing unusual, but if I scroll down a bit, there is an option PE in document, and I check the box, click on the save button, and now it becomes interesting, because when I go back to FBO2 and open the same document again, then the magic happens. I click on the pencil change button. I could change the amount, but I'm here only for doing something else. Now I check a box in the PE, and that takes me and opens a new window. And in this window, I could enter any bank account number I want. And the system then will allows me to post the invoice, which could lead to a payment to this bank account number. Okay, Joris.
Thanks, CJ. Interesting example again. So there's other ways we want to show you as well. And this is in the area of remote enabled function modules. In this case, the BAPI BUPA bank detail change. what's happening here is that you can use function modules to change bank details as well. This can be done locally, but also via remote-enabled function modules, meaning you can do the same thing not locally, but in another system. And what we typically find when we do penetration tests, for example, is that many customers have RFC connections with pre-filled users and password, quite often even with high privileges like SAP all assigned, from, let's say, low security zones to high security zones, for example, from dev to production. Why? For historical reasons, for customizing comparison, for whatever reason they had in the past to create those connections. Quite often they're created, but they're not cleaned up. And typically what you can do then is move laterally from dev to production, or abuse those connections to, on the dev system, call this BAPI BUPA bank detail change to a productive system via those predefined RFC destinations. Again, it sounds easy. It is. And the thing is, we see this a lot in practice. What does it look like? Let me show you the video again. This is the function module. We are currently in a developer system that we have access to. And we want to change bank details of our business partner, again in production, where we don't have access to. What we can do, in this case, search in the dev system for connections to a productive system. There is one here with predefined user and password, debug RFC. In this case, it has SAP all, which is convenient. And again, it might sound too easy. Quite often it is. But these connections quite often are there. And when we execute it, it gets updated in production. And what you can see is that we can also monitor that. We have another example, I think in the next slide. This is what it will look like if you perform what we call tier up outbound remote function module calls, or tier up RFC calls. You can see in these examples that you can see the function module that was called BAPI BUPA bank detail change, in this case from AED development into S4D production. And that's exactly what you want to know, because that's not standard to use, and it can be quite tricky. We have more functionality. We have an interface traffic monitor functionality, where you can also visualize these connections and make sure that you break those links if you don't need them. So connections from dev to production in general should not be there. That's it for the 7th example. There's one more that we want to add, and that's in the area of APIs. Why? Because we see an increase in the use of these application programming interfaces, especially, let's say in these modern hybrid landscapes where we have calls from SAP to other systems, between SAP systems, from on-premise SAP systems to BTP or other systems in the cloud. And the thing is that these APIs can come in handy, but they can also contain vulnerabilities like broken authentication, broken authorizations. And to make things worse, we see actually that quite often customers use weird, like kind of mass activation ways to just activate a whole bunch of APIs and really be overexposed or have overexposed attack surfaces. It's a bit like in the old on-premise world where we had transaction SICF to activate web services. Same thing we see happening now with APIs, and customers just, like crazy do activate them, being assisted by blog posts like this, where it literally says how to activate a million of ICF services and OData services. That's not the best practice. So please, please, please don't do that. That's why it's important to monitor active APIs because that helps to better understand the risk there. For example, from SecurityBridge, we have ways to show you active OData services, for example, to better give you insight in what is activated and deactivated again when needed. On an additional note, make sure to also patch. I mean, the APIs that SAP is offering, like on api.sap.com, that are in like SaaS-based solutions, they will patch it for you, but quite often customers use APIs in their own S/4HANA system as well, and these can be vulnerable too. Make sure to patch them. Quite some good examples. I'm handing over to you, TJ, again.
Yeah, to wrap up, the key points here: don't try this at home unless you have your own SAP system. So don't do it on your office system without any permission. Go beyond the regular rulebooks you typically have to ensure they are complete. There are multiple ways in SAP to do things, and people are creative. They'll always find a shortcut, avoid approvals, get things done. Always harden your system, and as Joris illustrated or said already a couple of times, patch. Automate, right? Don't rely on time-consuming, manual error-prone controls. Also include custom code in your security plan, like with the SecurityBridge. You can add those business fields like IBAN, GDPR data, credit limits, etc., payment terms in your configuration. You can also add the critical tables like freeway match tables for PP tolerance, etc., in there as well, to avoid that somebody is updating that directly in production. And focus on tooling, because that helps you to streamline, harmonize, and standardize your control environment and really have a good insight of what's happening in your system. Maybe a few words. Do scan the code, because there we are having free Secure Together on the roads events already announced. You can register by scanning the QR code. There is one shortly in London at the Accenture office. We also thought of our colleagues and everybody in India, everybody that's working on SAP security controls. So there will be one in Bangalore shortly, also in February. There are a few more announced, but they are not yet on the website, like in Houston and Tokyo. And of course, being for Rotterdam, right, the Secure Together event is I call it the main event, the biggest event. And as said before, there will be an entire security week with possibilities and opportunities to certify in SecurityBridge, go deeper, networking, learning, and having fun and a great time.
Yeah, the one in Rotterdam literally is the flagship event, right?
It's literally the flagship event because it's on a ship, a very big ship, which used to set sail to New York, where we had our previous event. And now it sails back to Rotterdam to arrive there just before the event. There's a new question.
Yeah, do we have time for some questions? I think we're at the time limit already, actually, but maybe I have nobody. Are there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, there's one. Let me ask you, do these techniques work if we have a firewall? The answer is yes, but you could answer.
Yeah, so this is looking at it from a technical perspective. So yes, firewalls are great to block a lot of stuff, but typically firewalls, the old ones, they work on port level. And I mean, an SAP system contains a lot of business logic that you don't typically control with open or closed ports. So it's not doing anything there. We have more modern web application firewalls that do know sometimes the content of traffic. Still there, these web application firewalls are not SAP aware. They don't speak Japanese. They don't know what's happening there. So no, firewalls don't do a lot. You really need to be on the application layer here, and either use smart SAP tooling that knows the application layer, like we offer, or have Tidian and his colleagues be on site to help you to really build proper controls that are smart and that can be automated and that go the next level, the next step.
Yeah, and that's what I like of the tool SecurityBridge, right? You can really equip it and change it also more in a business control and compliance tool by leveraging already the techniques and the capabilities of it. Are there any other questions? Thank you from Carrie. They love your background. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
I think,
Any last words from you, Joris?
one last question I see is that if we can hand out 8 recommendations. I don't think so, because we want to keep some of this stuff rather here online and not on slides that can be shared. I see one more question. Many things shown depend on the authorization concept. If you have a good and strong one, are the things shown still possible? So that will definitely help you mitigate a lot of the things. Yet, and that's the other side of the medal, authorizations are important. But as we always say, there is another side of the security medal. That's what we call SAP cybersecurity. You can have the best authorization concept and matrix in place, but if you did not patch, if you still have, let's say, insecure settings, insecure configuration, you can quite often easily bypass those authorizations. So it's definitely good, but it's not everything. You should start there, but you should not stop there.
Yeah, and to add, I think it definitely helps her, right? If you limit access, but there are always exceptions. There are always SAP standard users. There are people with wide authorizations. And I said, right, SAP comes with more than 100,000 transaction codes, a lot of Fiori apps, 60,000, I think, and what 4,000 or 5,000 Dimpros, a lot of APIs nowadays. So and you could have a good authorization concept, but I have never seen one that's bulletproof.
Exactly. Thanks. With that, I think, TJ, we can conclude. And I want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks. Have a happy holiday season. I think most of us are about to have some weeks off. Enjoy that. Thanks again.
Okay,
And
thanks.
see you next year.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.